go. Amazing. Thanks everyone again for joining. This is going to be a great time. We're going to chat about acing that non-tech interview. And there we go. All right, presenter mode in Google Slides. Great. This is all something that we should talk about in terms of preparation for an interview. You can prep and plan for everything, but you never know what's going to happen. So anyway, Movable Inc. is an enterprise business-to-business software as a service platform. We operate in the marketing technology space. And what that means is we create a platform used by enterprise brands like American Airlines, Gap, to power what we call intelligent creative in their web and email campaigns. That is a lot of words that nobody knows what that means. So what that means in practice is that we can actually power live content in an email or a marketing campaign. And what that looks like is, say you buy a very cheap, fabulous airline ticket, because all the airlines are having big sales right now. You purchase that airline ticket, and in your confirmation email, you are actually able to potentially upgrade your seat with live pricing and a live seating chart of that airplane in your email. Shannon also has a really great example of, you check your email in the morning, it says, hey, Shannon, you're in New York, it's 65 degrees. Here's some stuff that you can buy for the 65-degree weather. She gets on an airplane to San Francisco, opens up that same email, and it's going to say, hey, Shannon, in San Francisco, it's raining. Here's some umbrellas. From a tech stack perspective, we are actually built on Ember, Ruby, Node, and Go. And we are also, from a database perspective, we're on AWS. And we're going to chat about, we have certain roles here that are focused on not only engineering the products, but also doing engineering for our clients as well, which is super exciting, which is what Shannon's going to talk about. I have been at Movable Inc. for 4 years. I run global recruiting, and I have hired technical and non-technical folks at both Movable Inc. and prior high growth startups. And before that, I was actually sales at a job search website. So I've been spending my entire career talking to job seekers and helping them with their resumes and interviewing skills. I'll kick it off to Shannon for an intro.
Thank you, Carly. You guys can hear me okay, right? Carly, can you hear me? Okay, cool. I just need to make sure. Technology is hard. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having Carly and I today. My name is Shannon Cook. I am an Associate Director of Client Experience here at Movable Inc. I've been with Movable for about 4 years, stepping into this director position at the top of the year. So now I'm managing our clients and a team of client experience managers who run our accounts in the Midwest and Mountain region. Before that, for 3 years, I was a CX manager, CX client experience, for about 3 years in San Francisco. And I was one of the first hires in our San Francisco office. And I think that's important to note here. But because of that, I helped build and interview a lot of our client experience organization, including a lot of our solutions team. And our solutions team are our more technical folks in our client experience organization. So I have a lot of experience on running a non-technical interview for more technical folks. So I'm very excited to be sharing some tips and tricks and things that I've learned, things that I've seen over the last couple of years. Just to clarify logistically, we aren't going to be sharing any slides. We were going to have slides, but technology got in the way of that, and that's okay. So Carla and I are just going to have a conversation here.
And I'm more than happy to share the deck out at the end of this if anybody wants it. There are some great gifts in there for your entertainment. So take it away, Shan.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to start off at the top, just, thinking about what that non-technical interview can look like and how you all can prepare no matter, what the role is that you're looking for, how you can best prepare for that particular interview, and things that people like me as a interviewer and non-technical interviewer are looking for. We're also going to share some overall macro do's and don'ts of your interview, whether that's technical or non-technical, as well as some, thoughts around preparing for a virtual interview, because that is becoming more and more prevalent in our times, through coronavirus and all of the other things going on. And then lastly, we want to give you guys some thoughts about ways you can help yourself properly vet, the culture of the company that you're interviewing with. As we all know, the company is, not just the job that you're doing, it's the people that you're working with, it's the leadership that, is running the organization, it's the different, stances and, messaging and marketing that they're putting out. So it's important when you're interviewing to go through, some questions on how you can properly understand what that culture looks like and how, you would be a part of that. So we'll go through at the end. I'm seeing a couple of people in the chat ask for the deck. We'll absolutely send it over. And then what I'll do at the end as we're wrapping up, I will put my email and Carly's email as well as our LinkedIn's if you do want to further connect, continue to chat, and if there's any questions you have on the presentation today.
So with that, Shan, why don't you tell us, what are these solutions roles that you typically interview for? What are the roles? What do they do? And why are they important to Movable Inc?
Yeah, absolutely. So I figured it would be helpful to give you guys some context on the roles that I typically am interviewing for. A lot of the tips that I will provide can, definitely cross over to maybe a product role or engineering or design. But for the most part, the roles that I'm interviewing for are a part of our solutions team. So our solutions team is a subset of the wider client experience organization. And client experience really just means that we are here dedicated to our clients who sign on to work with Movable Inc. So you've got people like me, my team, who are client experience managers. They'll work directly with the clients. They're not as technical. Their aptitude for, different programming languages and coding languages that our platform works on may vary, but we work hand in hand, in tandem with our solutions team, and all of the beautiful visual personalized content that we do for our clients would not be possible without our solutions team. So they bring people like me, not only as a director now, but when I was a client experience manager as well, to, see how we, in an interview process, how we would work best with that person, chatting through some of those softer skills that are a little less tangible. So we'll go through what some of those are. But first, again, giving you context, the three roles that I mainly interview for, all on our solutions team, are our solutions architecture team, solutions consulting, and solutions developers. So what that means, and I'll go through those very quickly, solution architects, they act as liaisons between our CX team and our clients, specifically when we're working on larger scale technical integrations. So that's a little bit of project management. They'll help with feasibility and timelines. They'll also help with documentation. So these folks are wizards at taking very technical stats, facts, figures, and breaking them down for all levels of expertise, of technical aptitude to understand, which I think is such an important skill, one that I definitely don't have, and one I look for and respect in my solutions architectures. Solutions consultants, they act as resources for more our prospective clients. So they'll work side by side with the sales team. They'll assist with technical vetting of projects, platform onboarding. These guys are personable, charismatic, knowledgeable, and they really act as dictionaries to the rest of the CX organization to see what we can do, what we want to know, if something is possible. Those two roles are more client-facing in nature, meaning that they will actually interact directly with the clients. But our solutions developers, while they're probably the least client-facing in essence, they really are an integral part of client work getting done, because our solutions developers are the ones who are building custom solutions, projects, applications within our platform for our clients to leverage. They are working off of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, as well as interacting with different client APIs. And we on the CX team, meaning the managers and the directors, we work primarily or most frequently with our solutions developers. So collaboration and communication between those two roles are very, very important for us to be able to bring these client projects to life.
So Shannon, what do you look for when you interview these solutions types of candidates? What are the top 3 things that you are looking to get out of that 30 or 45-minute session with them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you 4 things, actually. So I'll give you a
bonus. We get a bonus. Thank you.
So when I step into this non-technical interview, I'm really looking for 4 different skills, traits, key things. Number 1, and I touched on it a little bit when I was explaining the roles, but communication. A strong candidate will be able to explain, demonstrate, and discuss advanced technical concepts with me as the interviewer, but also prove that, you know, they can have these types of conversations with coworkers and clients, especially those who don't understand technical concepts past the macro, past the broad strokes. So within the interview, bringing scenarios, bringing examples of how you've had those conversations in the past and how you've collaborated with different teams to be able to properly articulate the goals, objectives, and solutions of different projects that you've worked on. Secondly, more of this executive presence mindset, and that has nothing to do with if you're an executive or not, because we can all kind of stand up there and be proud of what we're doing. So that's what I'm looking for as well. Comfort with speaking up to colleagues, clients, prospects about your work. So with that, speaking with confidence in things that you've done in the past. And that doesn't mean you have to be the loudest person in the room. That doesn't mean you have to, you know, say the most, say the loudest, but really, you know, just articulating to me as the interviewer that you have a lot of pride in your work and you're not afraid of showing that off. Thirdly, and I will say this might be the most important skill that I look for, and it's not just in a non-technical interview. If I'm interviewing someone on my team as well, this is a skill I'll look for, but strategic problem solving and grit. Grit is one of Movable Inc.'s core values, and personally, in my experience, working in a client-facing role, customer success role, grit is one of the things that will make you most successful. And what I mean by that is rolling up your sleeves and not being afraid to get that job done or take the steps to get the job done, even if you might be wrong. So being able to call out and portray to me as the interviewer that you are willing to navigate through challenges with that can-do, will-do attitude, willingness to get the job done, even if you might be wrong, even if you don't know the answer. I always say to my team, I would rather you try something and maybe not land somewhere else than not try anything at all. And the last thing I'll say in terms of what I'm looking for is empathy and compassion. So kind of fitting onto communication as well, there will be a lot of times where our solutions team will work with clients, work with team members that have these, specific asks. Maybe there's a rush turnaround, maybe there's a timeline that we don't understand and we don't agree with. But as client-facing individuals working for this B2B SaaS company, we want to recognize that reasoning, put ourselves in their shoes, and understand those sides of the problem and solution, even if we don't agree. So again, in that interview, calling out the ways you've collaborated with other team members. Maybe you've run into a situation in the past where there was a timeline and you were up against the clock, but we were able to get that job done. Being able to articulate that and lead with empathy and compassion. And, with everything going on in the world today and with coronavirus, I think as marketers, we've learned more to lead with that compassion. So for those in technical roles to, help mirror that from their, marketing or client success facing roles, it'll just help to, bring everyone together so that we're all marching in the same direction.
I love every minute of that, Shannon. I think that's important with whatever role you are interviewing for. Can I put you on the spot for 1 second and ask you a question about a question?
Please do.
Amazing. Do you have a go-to or type of question that you like to ask in an interview that helps you uncover this?
Sure. So just to clarify, something that I ask as an interviewer.
What are your go-to questions?
Yeah. So I think we all know some of the cliche questions of interviews. What are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? I like to go a little bit further and call out, explain to me a situation where you made a mistake. What did you learn from that? Or explain a situation where you didn't agree with a coworker. How did you come to a solution there? I think it's important in interviews to go a little bit deeper than the surface level. And we're going to talk about this in my next section here, but always to be true to your authentic self. And, not just saying the right answer because you think it's what I want to hear. I'm not grading you. It's not a test per se. But I do want to hear those scenarios and those situations where, you did mess up or you did disagree with someone. We don't all walk around rainbows here, right? Sometimes these things are going to happen. But for you in an interview, because it is the first time you are making that impression with me, with the company, with the rest of the colleagues of mine that are interviewing you, show us that you can grow from it, that you have learned from it, and you can put your skills in practice to continue to level up in that way. So I'll typically ask, call out when that mistake was made, tell me what you learned from it, and tell me, how you put that learning into practice moving forward.
That's amazing advice, Shannon. Thank you. And with that note, what other do's and don'ts do you have for us?
Yeah. So a couple of do's I'll start with first. Do your research on the company and those interviewing you. And, this doesn't have to be, Movable Inc. 101. We don't have to take a full course here, but take 5-10 minutes, Google the company you're interviewing at, blog, LinkedIn, check out some press, especially in the tech startup world. There's lots of different awards that companies can win, best place to work in New York, or, best of marketing, or whatever the organization is, know that, maybe ask some questions about that. It just shows the interviewer that, you are paying attention, you're doing the work. And also, and you'll see this a lot with my do's and don'ts, what's important to me as an interviewer is that you want this job, not just a job. So doing these little do's and don'ts will show to your interviewer just that, extra step that you're willing to take. So do your research. And also, if you know who is interviewing you, search us on LinkedIn, do a Google search. I've had people come to me in the interview and say, hey, I saw that, you moved to San Francisco 3 years ago. What was that transition like? Or, hey, looks like, you're from Long Island. I know somebody from Long Island. It's always someone knows someone from Long Island.
I know someone from Long Island.
We just go all over the place in the country because we're trying to leave Long Island. But so being able to do that research and then make that conversation as well. I think that will also, as someone who is being interviewed, might make you feel a little less pressure if you're just having a conversation. Second, do show up early to your interview. That old, saying, if you're on time, you're late, that can certainly apply to this. And I think it's less of, showing that you are, respectful. Of course, that's true, but also for you want to give yourself time to decompress from getting there. Sitting down in the chair, waiting for the interview to start, you've got some time. Maybe you were on the subway or you are on a train driving through in traffic. If you get right to that interview, or if you're late, you won't have time to, compartmentalize everything that just happened and prepare yourself for the interview. Now, virtually might be a little bit easier, but we would also suggest showing up a couple minutes early, and Carly will run through some tips on how to interview. But again, it's all about putting yourself in the right mindset. So if you give yourself some time right before the interview, 15, 20 minutes, you'll be able to crush that interview, no problem. Do send a thank you note after the interview. And that can be email, LinkedIn. You want to go old school, pen and paper, that's great too. Again, just shows you are committed to this job, not just a job, from start to finish. Before you came to the interview and after you left. I love getting thank you notes. I always find it to be just that additional step of grit, that additional step of compassion. And I will remember someone who sends a thank you note, even if their interview was just okay. I'll remember that person over someone who really nailed it, but I didn't hear from them afterwards.
I will jump in real quick just with another note about thank you notes. I will say, if you're going to send a thank you note, make sure to take your time and double check yourself and do not copy and paste. I have had situations where I have had a candidate copy and paste the same thank you note to 3 different hiring managers, and that thank you note had the same typo in all 3 of them. So if you're going to do it, take some extra time and make sure you're doing it right. And especially as potential career changers, right? Talk about your transferable skills. You know, you did A, B, and C that can be successful in this organization because of X, Y, Z reason. I think really showing what you can bring to the table, and this does not have to be a 5-paragraph essay, right? It can be 1 sentence about how you can be a great asset to this team. That is content that I would absolutely recommend including in your thank you note. So with that, Shan, I think that's a good transition to some don'ts. Don't typo in your thank you note. What other don'ts do we have?
Yeah, no, that's a perfect note. Thank you, Carly. And I'll run through these don'ts a little bit quicker. Don't be vague in your answers. We talked about being able to properly articulate how you can communicate, how you can collaborate. Don't be vague, because it just leaves the interviewer wanting more and wondering why we weren't given more details on it. So don't let them wonder. Give all those anecdotes. If you have results too, bring those numbers, bring those facts, bring those receipts. We want to see that because we want to understand the full picture of all of your successes in the past. This I think might be the most important thing, and I called it out a little bit earlier. Don't say what you think is the right thing if it's not actually true. Be your true, authentic self. I'll give you an example. It might sound like a silly one, but if the interviewer says, well, we expect everyone to come in at 7 a.m. and leave at 10 p.m. It's very important to us. Don't say, that's great. Love working. I don't sleep. That's not true. And that sets you up for, that sets you up for failure for the company. So be true, be thoughtful, and also don't feel like you can't ask any questions. We want to hear from you what's most important to you about the culture, about how you can grow. That's super important too. It's not just this one role. It's not just this job. Ask questions that will set you up for success now, 6 months, 1 year, 5 years down the line. And it might not be that you're going to be at the company for that long, but you should understand, as someone who is looking for this new role, how you can be set up for success. So with that, I know we have just a couple minutes to QA. Carly, you want to run us through some virtual tips and tricks?
I would love to. And I am from New Jersey. I speak quickly. And again, we will share this deck out with some bullet points. I will say this slide was a GIF of Kristen Chenoweth, so we'll make sure it's a little bit cleaner when we send it out. But in terms of virtual interviewing, it's feeling like there's a lot of blog posts and webinars just about the future of hiring and the future of interviewing. And it's looking like it's going to be virtually and remote for a very long time. So let's get comfortable with this strangeness, right? So just some quick tips and tricks with regards to interviewing virtually. Try to be in a well-lit, quiet space. Join your meeting early. Test your tech ahead of time. If you have the Zoom app, make sure it's updated. If I had a dime for every time I joined a meeting and then I had to restart my Zoom, it's a whole thing. So especially on an interview where you are making a first or second impression, try to make sure that your tech works. Something else that's interesting, and I will tell you, I was making an offer to a candidate once and then my dog bit my dog walker. I can promise you, any issue that you may have with your dog, your kid, your partner, your roommate, your interviewer is most likely having the same issue. Mm-hmm. It is okay to say, listen, I got a dog in the background, they'll probably say, oh, who's your dog? So don't fret about that. If you are comfortable, I think it can be fun actually to do an interview without a virtual background. I like to talk about my race medals behind me. It's a good way to build a relationship with your interviewer when you can't have that small talk going from conference room to conference room. Additionally, I would recommend that you treat this like you would a normal in-person interview. Silence your phone, mute your Slack, minimize your email. There is something also to be said about, dressing up a little bit. I'll be honest, this is the first time I've blow dried my hair in like 6 weeks for this particular event. So, especially if we all are working from home, try to prepare as best you can and do what you need to do to feel confident and feel good. In the last 2 minutes, something that I do want to remind everybody of with regards to interviewing is that at the end of the day, it's as much an interview for you as it is for us. Right? We need to figure out if you can satisfy the requirements of the job. And you as interviewers need to figure out if this is a job that you want and a company you want to work for. And by interviewing virtually, you no longer have the ability to see people chatting at the coffee pot, right? And I think culture is also what happens when you're not drinking coffee and playing ping pong. So as interviewers, I think you have every right to ask about how has COVID affected the business, right? Mm-hmm. And what are you doing to support your ERGs, employee resource groups? Do you have employee resource groups? Shannon, shameless plug, is actually co-chair of our women's group called Movable Pink. Thinking about how are you communicating with your teams, right? What is leadership done? And I think in current events and a lot of statements that organizations have made, if it is important to you, I think as interviewers, you have every right to ask, how are you supporting Black Lives Matter? And what are you committing to bettering your company and the world out there? I think if these are things that are important to you and a place that you want to work, you have every right to ask those questions. So please don't forget to, as we've all been hearing since the beginning of COVID, take care of yourself in this interviewing process as well. And with that, I believe I have 15 seconds to start Q&A early. So why don't we do that? Is that cool, Kamari?
Yes, it is. Go for it. I saw one of the questions dropped already, so if you want to start there, and I'll encourage everyone else that is in this talk right now watching to go ahead and start dropping some questions, and we'll have Shannon and Carly pick them up.
Yeah. Thank you, Kamari. First question I saw from Aaliyah, should we send a thank you note within 1 day from the interview? What's your thought? So I'll go first, and Carly, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. I think within 24 hours of the interview is sufficient. You don't want to, it's a delicate balance, right? We don't want to have you send it as you're walking out, out the door there. But we also, want to make sure it still stays top of mind and top of mind for you as well. So I think a great rule of thumb is if you have the interview in the morning on Thursday, send it out in the morning on Friday. If you have an afternoon on a Wednesday, you can wrap up your Thursday by sending out the thank you. Keeps it top of mind, it keeps it fresh, but allows you to kind of get back and decompress from the interview as well, rather than like, oh, I have to send this out or I'm never going to get this job, all that. Let yourself decompress, think about how it went, and then send it out about a day or so after.
And, I would agree with that, Shannon. You definitely want to take some time, decompress, reflect, think if you have any follow-up questions, what you can add to the conversation. I think something that is interesting is that used to be a lab, but now is an actual feature of Gmail is that if it's top of mind and you want to send it and it's 2 hours after your interview, you can always schedule send for 3 or 4 hours later, just so you don't forget about it. So I think that is that's a great hack there. When should you send? Friday afternoon. Oh, that's an interesting question. I think Monday's fine. Or if you interview Friday afternoon, you're thinking about it Friday night, schedule send for Monday morning. Just so also, as people who do what we do, and I'm sure you guys get a lot of emails over the weekend, if you schedule send for first thing Monday, I think that can be really useful. So it's at the top of our inbox.
Yeah, that's a great point. Desi, I see you're asking a few questions as well. If you're interviewing with the same person again, when would you send? Meaning that if you are interviewing first round with someone, then you come back third round, I would send thank you notes after every round. I don't think in this case you can be over polite or over compassionate in that way. So I would follow the same 24-hour rule or so. I think the Friday afternoon, sending it Monday morning, great tip. I'll tell you, a lot of people who are maybe just in marketing or directors, they're probably not going to read anything on Friday afternoon anyway. So sending on Monday, sending on a Monday is perfect. And then Desi, your other question, do you send thank you to a recruiter? Absolutely, because, plug to Carly, but the recruiters are really the nucleus of this entire operation. Starting it off with you, finishing it, definitely send your thank yous to recruiters as well.
I will say with recruiters, just a simple thanks so much will suffice. I save the energy for the hiring managers. All right, Paige has a couple of questions here. This seems like a long one. There's a lot of context here.
I can quickly summarize it for you.
Yeah, that would be amazing, Kamari.
Yes, maybe we have time for these two more. So from Paige, the question is, how would you handle a diversity problem you witness in the workplace? And she's giving some examples of how she might do that, but that's the overall ask there. And let's see. So I think it's around what should you say? So obviously, we're talking about acing technical interviews here, but perhaps if this is something the person has dealt with in their past workspace, how would you kind of address diversity and diversity problems in that interview?
What's interesting is actually I had this conversation with my SVP of product yesterday. She is actually asking questions around allyship in her interviews. I will say, as this is something that is fairly top of mind for a lot of people who are interviewing, based off of the context I have here, Paige, I would say I don't think that there is a wrong answer. I think that it's important to be honest and talk about why and really think about, well, if I weren't to say something, well, why wouldn't I? And what would I have done instead? Just really, really interrogating that situation, just because everybody does have different comfort levels, right? So, I think everybody is trying to show up as an ally in different ways and doing what we can. And I think if you frame it that way, I don't think there's a wrong answer there.
And I think to that point as well, if the interviewer, so if I ask you, Paige, how would you handle a diversity problem you witness in the workplace? And to Carly's point, that can decision be however you feel comfortable because you want to put your authentic self out there. I would ask the interviewer a question and say, how does this company, handle these types of conversations? Is there an employee resource group for diversity, and inclusion? Are there, HR office hours that we can share that are anonymous so that I feel comfortable speaking my voice? That I think will show more about how the company is doing. And to your point, if the entire office culture is like that, it can feel hard to feel like you can make a difference. But as the interviewee, you have that opportunity to understand what that culture looks like by asking them that question back. Especially with, all that's going on in the country over the last, weeks and months, this is going to be something where we as interviewees can really, put that question out there to see what these companies are doing and how they are, handling the conversation. And if they're not giving opportunities to have the conversation, then that might not be somewhere you want to work. So I would say to you, Paige, if that question is asked, answer it in the way that you feel most comfortable, but have that dialogue with them so that you can have that open conversation about what can happen and what the company is doing to make sure we all feel comfortable, safe, and proactive having this type of conversation. And hopefully that brings change with it.
Retweet, Shannon. Retweet. Kamari, do we have time for the last salary question, or should we park that for maybe a follow-up?
We can answer that last question in 1 minute, and then we will jump off. And thank you both so much. Apologies for working, but yeah, we can wrap up on that question. But just wanted to give you all that praise before we jump off.
Amazing. And thank you for bearing with us with some of the technical issues at the beginning. We got through it together. Yes. So in terms of discussing salary, I will tell you personally, I actually think based off of other people who have looked for jobs, I tend to run recruiting process a little bit differently, mostly because I like to set expectations often and early around things that are important to the candidate, whether that is title and or working styles and not limited to salary, right? So I think, especially as members of, women who code, as women or women identifying, I think we earned it, right? Like, let's just own it and say, this is what I think I deserve, right? So I think we should be comfortable having these conversations, and, I think it's appropriate to ask the recruiter, what is the range for this role, or what are you looking to pay? Most likely they may come back with, well, what are you looking for? But you have the right to ask that question. And again, I think the big thing is we earned it. So let's do it. Let's own it.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, thank you both so much. I want to highlight to everyone in the chat, Shannon and Carly dropped some additional information on their email and LinkedIn. So go ahead and I'll give you a minute to grab those, and then we will end this session. So thank you again.
All right. Amazing. Thank you so much for attending, everybody. This was fun.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.